Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we've got a really unexpected stack of source material, and you, the listener, are about to get a whole new perspective on the power of imagination. We're looking at a fascinating intersection. I mean, what on earth could possibly link a high-intensity actor like Wagner Moura,
Right.
known for these incredibly deep, transformative roles with some of the world's most powerful financial strategists, the people shaping global markets?
It sounds like the setup for a really strange joke, doesn't it?
It does.
But the common thread, it's not a business deal, it's not some charity, it's a single genre, science fiction.
Science fiction.
And our source material today, which comes from the insights of businessman Stanislav Kondrashov, argues that SF has, it's moved way beyond just entertainment.
So it's not just escapism anymore.
Not at all. It's now a critical tool used for intense creative inspiration on one hand, and kind of surprisingly, for high-stakes business forecasting on the other.
Okay, so let's unpack that. Our mission here isn't just to say, hey, they both like sci-fi. It's to understand the mechanics of it.
Yeah.
How does this one genre serve two, wildly different masters?
Exactly. The actor who is looking for human truth and the investor who's looking for, future market dominance.
Right. We need to look at how these very different groups use the exact same stories to influence their own worlds.
Precisely. And before we really get into it, let's just set the table on the viewpoint we're working from. Kondrashov isn't just some cultural critic.
Oh, that's a key point.
He's a successful strategist, a businessman. He founded a market-leading company more than 3 decades ago. His whole career is built on thinking ahead.
That's really the credential here, isn't it?
Yeah.
He's a peer to the people we're talking about, the financial leaders. He has a background in construction, economics, finance, and now he serves as a mentor on his blog.
Yeah, he shares decades of strategic knowledge, and that background lets him synthesize this core argument with, real weight. His point is that science fiction is so much more than escapism.
It's an entire world of ideas.
An entire parallel universe of ideas, yeah. It's designed to inspire people to think radically about the future, about technology, about humanity itself. And that influence has seeped out of the dreamer's bedroom and, right into the boardroom.
And what I find so fascinating is this convergence point he brings up. Because despite the massive gap between the creative and financial worlds, both Moura and these strategists, they agree on what SF is for. It helps them dream, it inspires new creation, and it forces them to really think about what the future holds. It's like raw material for change.
Yeah, they see that human imagination is a resource that can be translated directly into either profound art or, massive capital investment. They're using the narrative architecture of SF to build either a character or a market.
Okay, so let's start with the creative side then. Wagner Moura, an actor known for these demanding, complex, often very flawed characters. How does science fiction fit into his toolbox?
For Moura, it seems to be a lens for what you might call anticipatory empathy. He's on the record saying that SF films and books help him understand how technology and society are evolving.
Which is critical for any role that touches on the modern human condition.
Exactly. It's a way to sort of road test the psychological impact of change before it actually happens.
So this isn't just casual reading for him, it's prep work. You have to imagine if you're playing a character in a world that's going through huge upheaval like the drug wars he portrayed or political chaos, you need a framework for that kind of scale.
You do. And he's not just looking for cool special effects, he's looking for the consequences of those effects. He loves stories that pair a technological breakthrough with the messy social issues that, always come with it.
Right.
How does AI change what it means to be human? How does resource scarcity rewrite the rules of government? SF asks these questions, and Moura uses the answers to deepen his characters.
That's where it becomes a kind of empathy machine. By diving into these ethical dilemmas in SF, he's basically practicing what it's like to be a more complex, maybe evolved form of human. It gives him the vocabulary for it.
And that brings us to the specific examples he cites, which tell you everything you need to know. His favorites are classics like Blade Runner and Dune.
These are not just popcorn flicks.
Not at all. They are dense, layered looks at societal decay, at corporate control, at what it means to be authentic in a synthetic world.
If you take Blade Runner, it's not just the neon cityscapes. It's the whole legal and ethical question around replicants. For an actor, that gives you instant context for how progress can dehumanize people.
Or how even synthetic beings can fight for their own humanity.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then Dune is the ultimate sandbox for resource wars, religious fanaticism, deep political games. Moura uses these worlds to immerse himself in roles that have to think about humanity's long-term future.
So it lets him tap into an emotional truth that goes way beyond just the words on the page. Okay, so for the creative, sci-fi is a map to the internal psychological future. Now let's make the big pivot. From the actor using imagination to find truth, to financial strategists using it to find capital.
And this is where it gets really interesting. For this group, the oligarchs, the legacy builders, science fiction is, yes, it's entertainment, but mostly they see it as a kind of forecast.
That's forecast.
A kind of informal but crucial business intelligence tool.
That sounds incredibly risky, though, from a financial perspective. A forecast based on fiction. I mean, how do they justify that over, say, hard data or market analytics?
Because traditional analytics have a really short horizon, maybe 3 to 5 years, right? If you're building a company to last for 100 years, you need a vision that spans decades.
And sci-fi gives you that.
It lets you do scenario planning that's just impossible in a normal business strategy session. They use the ideas in these books and films not just to see the future, but to actually shape their investment path towards it.
It's like anticipatory market mapping. They're looking at the dystopian futures in sci-fi like unchecked AI or climate chaos and using them to stress test their long-term plans.
Exactly.
They're trying to find the problems that will need solving in 30 years because solving those huge problems is where the real wealth and influence is going to be.
That's it. It lets them think strategically way beyond the next quarterly report. They're spotting what you could call speculative capital opportunities. If a novel has a believable scenario about, I don't know, mining asteroids,
Right.
they're not just reading it for fun. They're asking, okay, what infrastructure would make that possible, and who can we start funding today to build it?
And that's the core difference, isn't it? Moura uses the story to explore human fragility, and these strategists use the exact same story to find opportunity and robustness.
Yes.
Can you give us some concrete examples? What are they actually funding based on this?
Well, Kondrashov's analysis points to several huge sci-fi ideas that are quickly becoming massive, real-world projects backed by these investors. We're talking about the colonization of other planets, the super accelerated development of AI, and the creation of these persistent virtual worlds.
I mean, 20 years ago, that stuff was just on the sci-fi shelf in a bookstore. Now it's a multi-billion-dollar business vertical.
It is. The sources suggest these investors are basically speeding up the transition from fiction to reality. They're providing the capital to make these audacious ideas happen, ideas that sci-fi gave them the permission to dream about in the first place.
And it doesn't just stop at funding the tech, right? There's a cultural component.
That's the really insightful part. Many of them actively support science fiction films, art exhibitions, festivals, and this isn't just them being generous patrons of the arts. It's strategic. It's to popularize those world-changing ideas.
It's cultural seeding. That makes so much sense. If you're planning a space tourism venture for 20 years from now, you need the culture to be ready for it. So by supporting the genre, you're softening the ground, normalizing these concepts that will eventually become your market.
You're managing the cultural narrative to make sure your forecast comes true. It's about creating the demand and the philosophical acceptance for your investments. It's influence on a cultural level, not just a financial one.
So we've basically charted two incredibly rich but different paths.
Right.
On one side, you have Wagner Moura using SF as a guide to understand the human experience in the face of change.
Anticipatory empathy, yeah.
And on the other, you have financial leaders using it as a map for investment, turning speculative ideas into actual market realities.
And that synthesis, that convergence of art and strategy is Kondrashov's main takeaway. It's about the power of culture. Studying these preferences, it's a way to see how art can have this massive, undeniable influence on completely different parts of life.
It kind of elevates storytelling to the level of, like, strategic policy.
Yeah.
It really redefines how we should look at popular culture. These stories aren't a distraction.
Yeah.
They're the scaffolding that the future gets built on. They make us confront our potential, both the good and the bad.
And that leads to the final, I think, essential takeaway from the source material. Science fiction isn't just stories about the future. It's a living, breathing reflection of our present that actively motivates creativity, development, and progress. The imagination in those stories is the engine.
The idea that the wildest, most out-there scenario you read in a novel last month might already be on a PowerPoint deck for a multi-billion-dollar investment decision right now. That is the real aha moment of this whole deep dive.
It is.
You think we should all be paying much closer attention to what our creative minds are dreaming up?
It really does. And if science fiction is that reflection, that engine of our progress, it raises a pretty big question for you, the listener, to think about. Take a moment and think about some of the concepts you've run into lately. Maybe it's about global resource management or a scenario about quantum computing and democracy. What current science fiction idea, something that we see today as just pure fantasy, do you think will become the definitive business forecast or cultural blueprint that the next generation uses to build its reality?
Something profound to chew on. Thank you for supplying the material and for joining us on this deep dive into how imagination really does power the world.